In the wake of the Paris attacks, I was listening to LBC, in which a 20-year-old girl told her heartbreaking eyewitness account from the heart of the violence. Her account of fear, horror, confusion and vulnerability as she was caught up in the middle of the shootings was impossible to imagine. As she spoke about how close she was to being a victim and her fortune for surviving the attack, the reporters, and rightly so, acknowledged how brave she was for enduring what she had and for telling her story, especially at 20 years old. But as she told her story, what was going through my mind was the thousands of families, children, mothers, fathers, in the heart of war zones, surrounded by bullets and bombs, constantly at the mercy of people trying to directly or indiscriminately kill them. And if not kill them, recruit them. In some cases, these people are enduring what this 20-year-old French girl had gone through multiplied tenfold. Suffering is suffering wherever it happens. But these are the refugee stories, the Iraqi stories, and so many more. Yet so many people see these stories or the victims of France as different from other parts of the world. If we didn't, we'd see Facebook pictures with flags on every single day. Things can and do feel worse when they're closer to home, or closer to familiarity. But perhaps that's part of the problem. If we only react or become hurt when it's closer to home, then we're never going to tackle tragedies across the world. We'll continue to accept these atrocities as a necessary evil until it's too late and they've spread here, just like we saw in Paris. We pick and choose which people are justifiable casualties from our government's foreign policies, like the arms trade, oil, Saudi Arabia, Middle Eastern conflicts and religious fanaticism. Our opinions are shaped simply by the exposure that they get, rather than the actual suffering of those people. Perhaps when we start to share our anger, frustration and sickening despair equally across all victims and perpetrators of awful atrocities, then we may start to find our humanity, and in turn, maybe some actual solutions. There are a lot of strong emotions out there right now, but emotions alone aren't going to benefit any of us. Yes, we should be devastated for the victims and anger towards the perpetrators, but we cannot simply ignore the chain of events that led us here, not only in Paris, but all over the world. We need to analyse all and every action made by all parties, or will merely contribute to exacerbating the situation further. This concern is highlighted by Professor Peter Newman, Professor of Security Studies at King's College London, stating, "This is the attack everybody has been dreading for at least a couple of years. This is really important because it is the essence of terrorism. It is not only about people being killed, it's about creating a political effect. What worries me most is that we will see in France and other European countries a polarisation, with different extremists egging each other on and people on the far right trying to take advantage. It's about dividing societies. This is a big attack, but even relatively small attacks are dangerous because of the political situation, because of the chain reaction they can cause. We've had over 13 years of the war on terror, and terrorism is still very much hanging over us all. Whatever we do next could make it increasingly worse. So far, all the military action taken in the world, such as the billions spent or the infringements on our freedoms and our liberties, and not to mention the immeasurable loss of life, which is so often now seen as a necessary collateral damage of conflict, until it's on our doorstep. Has all this action made the world a safer place? France just dropped 20 bombs on Syria. Do you feel any safer? Do you really see us wiping out them? Whoever them is. Amongst the both mindless and intriguing comments on social media following these atrocities, these are 5 things we think that anybody who wants peace in the world needs to see. One piece by Owen Jones looks at whether increased surveillance is enough to keep us safe. But meanwhile, we continue to sell arms across the world, in some cases to foreign dictators with links to religious fanaticism. An almost parallel analysis was being made in 1992 by Tony Benn in his speech to Parliament about arms sales to Iraq. The speech sounds like it could have been made today in a damning indictment of just how little things have changed. We ignored it then. Can we afford to ignore it again? Independent journalist Geroido Coleman also offers analysis onto the theory that we are being manipulated by ISIS, who are trying to start a war and are close to succeeding through us being manipulated by the capitalist agendas of the West through seeking profits from the arms trade and natural resources. Whether or not any of these theories hold true or not, Australian reporter Waleed Ali's words show the sensitivity and caution we should be applying right now. If we don't, we may end up making the same paranoid and reactionary mistakes of the likes of Tony Blair and George Bush as they led us into the Iraq War. Maybe we need to give up some of our liberties, but maybe it wouldn't even make any difference. We haven't even explored what exactly we would be giving up. Journalist Glenn Greenwald's talk, Why Privacy Matters, doesn't accept the commonly used phrase, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear, widely attributed to Nazi propaganda mogul Joseph Goebbels. It turns out the Nazis had plenty to hide, but they made sure that that rhetoric meant that nobody could expose them. Greenwald looks at some real examples as to why this statement isn't as black and white as it seems. These are all just theories, but before we take the next step as individuals, and as a nation, we need to look at more than the conclusions of these tragic events that we see on the news. We need to know why they're happening in the first place. It's very hard not to be angry or upset right now, but the famous words of Maya Angelou couldn't be more prescient right now. Hate. It has caused a lot of problems in the world, but hasn't solved one yet.